Hi, everybody. This week I read a wonderful novel, Violets, by Kyung-Sook Shin, translated from Korean by Anton Hur. The book is a character study of a 23-year-old woman in Korea in the early 1990s. There's not much of a plot, but it's a fascinating book that is beautifully written. Novels can put incredible imagery in our minds. That's the power of writing. I want to use some of the imagery from this novel to demonstrate techniques for creating images in Midjourney. The novel's title, Violets, play a symbolic role in the story. Plants are a major theme in the novel. If we enter only the word violets in Midjourney, we get these images of violets. That's our baseline for knowing how Midjourney interprets the word violets. Flowers are often the subject of macrophotography, and we can try this prompt, macro photograph of white violets. Violets are not always purple. Our story talks about violets in different colors, white, yellow, pink, and of multicolored violets. Light pink mixed with purple. So these are violets. Violets. They bloom everywhere, making them seem more like reeds than proper flowers. Let's take that line and rephrase it in a way suitable for a Midjourney prompt. Violets blooming everywhere like reeds. Adding the word roadside to the beginning of the prompt. We can expand our knowledge of macro photography techniques in Midjourney by specifying a lens type that's commonly used for macro photography, such as a 105mm lens at an f11 aperture to designate a shallow depth of field. Macro photography, as the name implies, is often even closer. Here the prompt is macro photograph of pink violets, 180mm lens, f22. Naming a specific part of the flower can zoom into those details: petal, stamen, pistil. Macro photograph, extreme close-up, stamen, African violet detailed. I don't know enough about botany to know if Midjourney is giving me the correct anatomy for a flower or not. This looks more like the face of a fly made from parts of a flower. Many of the scenes in the novel take place at a flower shop in Seoul, South Korea. In addition to the main character, another Korean woman of the same age also works in the flower shop and in a greenhouse. I can start with this prompt. That gives us beautiful portraits, but let's try for a scene that is more casual rather than having the characters posing for the camera. Adding wide shot to the beginning of our prompt moves the image out a bit. We can try specifying the lens type, such as 50mm. But I found this scene that specifying a lens type did not make a difference in the composition, even with an 85mm lens or a 100mm lens. After some rerolls, I finally got this image of the woman looking off to the side, though there's nothing in the prompt that specifies the direction of the gaze. There's a part in the novel where a photographer is taking photographs of violets for the cover of a magazine. And he remarks, so these are violets. These images still look more like digital renders than actual photographs. This is a good place to introduce the option to make an image in the style of insert a photographer's name. There's a floral photographer, Mandy Disher, with a unique style of photographing flowers. This first set did not pick up the detailed style of Disher, though it does present the flowers as flat, and the lack of depth is an intriguing characteristic of her floral photography. But she also puts her images against a different color background than the black we see here. Inspired by Disher's style, I tried creating an image without specifying her name. The prompt, flat photograph, no depth, of amazing multicolored violets, roots, dirt, against a white floral texture background. I'm pleased with these results. In this case, I found a more specific prompt worked better than specifying the style in the image of a photographer. Ultimately, I think that's what we should be working towards instead of using an artist's name as a shortcut for describing a style. After all, we want to use the works of others as inspiration for coming up with a unique image style. If we ask ChatGPT to describe the style of Disher, we get a lot of descriptive terms that we can add to our prompt. Like, let's pick out our key terms: intricate details or intricately detailed, dreamy or ethereal. I would use one or the other. Soft or diffused lighting, warm glow, shallow depth of field, negative space, calm, serene. I will also add the term translucent. You could experiment and add terms one by one to evaluate the impact. I'm going to add many of these terms and see what we get. I like these. We are nowhere near the style of Mandy Disher, but that's fine. We have another style here. I want to see what happens if I take warm glow off of the end of the prompt. I like these as well. Try this prompt yourself with other types of flowers and variations in the descriptive terms. An incredible quote from the novel. Writing allows San to hide herself in words. San is the main character. That sentence entered into Midjourney, though I replaced the name San with the pronoun her. The use of the stylized parameter did not make any impact on this prompt. A wonderful piece of writing for these lines. Memory is an unannounced visitor. It lies crumpled in some corner of the body, then suddenly knocks on the door of reality and makes you scream. Let's try that as a prompt and see what we get. There's something here, but I would like to see more variations with a reroll. While these images are interesting, none of them are grabbing me as expressing what that prompt is about. They're all a bit too literal. Adding a stylized parameter like stylized 900 does not make much difference. Let's try nudging this prompt into a different art style by adding in the name of a director. Since we're dealing with a novel by a Korean writer, we'll use a Korean director, Park Chan-wook. The prompt, cinematic scene by Park Chan-wook, and then the quote. Here, we get a much more thoughtful image that portrays the essence of what the character is feeling, but without giving us a literal interpretation. This phrase, mastered the art of communicating without words. I'm going to keep the cinematic style of Park Chan-wook as a method for maintaining the Korean aspect of the scenes. Here's the prompt. These are great scenes. Note that there's an illustration field to these scenes. I did not specify photograph or movie still. These are more like an illustrated storyboard. As I've been working on this video, version 5 of Midjourney was released. All the previous images have been done in version 4. Let's try this same prompt in version 5. These are very realistic scenes. The images in version 5 defaulted to a photorealistic image, unlike the images produced with version 4, even though I did not change the prompt. These are so cinematic that I wonder if it simply took an image from a Park Chan-wook movie, but I don't recognize any of these scenes. Let's move to another metaphor describing the novel on page 108. Her heartache and vertigo worsen, making her feel as if the sky is about to burst through the ceiling into the greenhouse. Again, I'm keeping the Park Chan-wook style for the prompts. First, let's try version 4. We get nice greenhouse scenes, dramatic lighting, a wonderful setting. Maybe there's a slight sense of heartache and melancholy, but I don't get a sense of vertigo. And maybe that's getting lost in the prompt. Anyway, these are excellent compositions. Let's try this same prompt with version 5. Again, we're seeing the shift to photorealism. In this case, I prefer version 4. On page 149, I like this description of flower shadows falling across her face. Let's try to visualize that scene. I wasn't sure what to expect, but I like the darkness of these images. And we have a sense of movement inspired by the word falling. The same prompt in version 5. The images, I think, are not as powerful in comparison to those from version 4, but here you do see the quality of the woman's face. But the face seems a bit airbrushed. I love the profile in shadow, but would prefer that the flowers look more realistic for this one. On page 151, the writing is powerful with its closing paragraph to the section. I'm going to use one phrase from that paragraph in prompt. A small woman curled up at the bottom of a rail. It's a metaphor for how the main character of the novel is feeling at that moment. Midjourney is likely to give us a literal interpretation, but let's see what we get. These don't quite capture the despair of that sentence. What if I added in the first phrase of that sentence to the prompt? What remains is a woman in pitiful thrall. We're not seeing a big difference. I like this variation because of the woman's reflection in the water. Moving on to another description from the novel was an ink drawing on onion skin paper of violets, multicolored white, yellow, purple, pink. These are lovely. I think onion skin is more translucent than these pages, but the images are still wonderful. I'm adding translucent to the prompt. Adding translucent gives that different quality to the images. So before I end, a reminder that Violets is a really good read, though a very serious book. It's set in Korea, but could apply to any place in the world. It's a really good work of literature. Finally, I'm going to try these ink drawings in version 5 of Midjourney, and I will leave you with those images. Honestly, I don't find the version 5 images as good as the style in version 4. With version 5, we need to think more creatively with the prompt, though these version 5 images are still wonderful. I'm not complaining. More on version 5 in an upcoming video. Enjoy creating images.